Good evening. My name is Michael and Hercules, and I'm here to discuss why we as a nation should not have withdrawn from Afghanistan, or maybe we just shouldn't have withdrawn as hastily, or maybe just not completely. I would like to start by addressing the fact that Biden's decision to withdraw did make sense. There were aspects to his argument that, of course, I'm going to agree with because I'm in the military, I'm an American, I understand that we have other issues at hand and we can't focus and put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. But what I will say is I think that the hasty withdrawal that we did for Afghanistan actually caused a lot of problems, and I'm going to start with that. So in my opinion, though Biden had this grand plan to evacuate, I think it was 150,000 people in one day, or not in one day, but in a span of days to make sure that we were safe, what this actually ended up doing was it increased the refugee crisis in other countries. So if you've been keeping up with any kind of foreign policy, you do realize that there is a refugee crisis because of the Syrian civil war. The Syrian civil war has displaced so many people into these European nations. So now the problem is we're adding these extra people into these European countries who already do not have a lot of jobs to offer. There's not a lot of places for people to live. So now we're just kind of adding on to these problems that are already existing in a lot of countries right now, especially because of the pandemic. So we're causing a lot of civil unrest in nations that, in my opinion, we already consider allies. So now, not only are we not helping out one country that we really have had a mutual agreement to help out and protect, we're now also causing problems with other countries that we do consider allies because of this refugee crisis. In addition to that, so we've already addressed the fact that this is kind of adding to the refugee crisis that the Syrian civil war has really, really created in the past, I'd say 10 years, and the Arab Spring I'd like to add. So now we're going to talk about the strategic placement of where Afghanistan is and why that's important to us. So in my opinion, because Afghanistan is right next to Iran, and then it's kind of near Afghanistan, but then it's kind of near Pakistan, but then you also have China right there. So if to go back to the Syrian civil war a little bit, and the only reason I bring it up is because at the end of the day, history does tend to repeat itself. We see the impact that Iran had in Syria. Bashar al-Assad was or is a Shiite leader, and then Iran is a Shiite country. So now you have Afghanistan, who is Sunni. So now we're going to have this political unrest. And of course, Iran is going to want to swoop in and kind of take over and impose its religious influence onto this country who, in their opinion, isn't following what should be done, which in the Middle East is super important. And of course, China, another one of our enemies, is going to jump in on this because it's going to make it easier for them to kind of play that game, that political chess, so to speak. And now, so we could really be playing into a World War III situation on top of the Russia-Ukraine problems that we're having already to date. On top of this, Afghanistan has so much oil. I think it's like 1.6 billion. I did write it down, 1.6 barrels of crude oil total, in addition to 16 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. So if we're looking at this from a financial perspective, it would probably behoove America to have stayed in for a little bit longer and help them out a little bit more, because they ended up having such a huge collapse. Kabul collapsed right after we left, and the country itself is just in shambles, and we really could have prevented that and saw the gold mine of finances that they do have in Afghanistan, that we kind of could have done a quid pro quo with Afghanistan in the end. Thank you.